Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Week 6 digital journalism class. I'm traveling to the nation's capital this weekend, apparently, for some Google election fact check training program. So you get to listen to me on YouTube. Lucky you. We covered everything on Tuesday, October 1st, the history of fake news and all that stuff. We're going to get into Thursday, October 3rd now, which we're starting kind of a long, stretched out series of social media lectures and trainings and tools and stuff like that. We'll touch on it now a little bit in week 7, and then kind of wrap it up with LinkedIn and things like that after the midterm. So everything that I covered today can potentially show up on the midterm, so it's important that you watch the whole thing. We got a short lecture on audience engagement tools and social video. Then we're going to look at some crowdsourcing. Real good example from Brody Ford, who's an alum of this class. He now works for Bloomberg Business News in New York City. We're going to talk a little bit about harassment, women who are harassed on Twitter, journalists who are harassed on Twitter for doing their jobs. And there was a very interesting video that I'll have you guys watch. The link is right here. That really digs into the issue. And then we'll talk about some ways to protect yourselves if you're being harassed by somebody online. I've been a target of a certain organization, it's an alt-right organization that doesn't like the fact that I teach journalists, fact-checking techniques and things like that. So they've harassed me online. I'll share that sometime with you in class in person. I don't want to leave this too much of this out on the internet so they can see it. But we'll talk a little bit about the final project ideas too, and the final project pitch. Just make sure you've looked over the homework too, some terms in the online journalism terms handout. A good little guide on National Public Radio's social media graphics guide, gives you some ideas for the final project of handling the social media for that part of it. Chapter 2 in the verification handbook. And then your big deadline coming up is noon on Monday, October 7th, is getting your final project ideas to me. Remember, 2 ideas, short summary, like we looked at the other day, and I'll go through them and approve which one to do, and then you'll be able to get started. Make sure when you email me that idea that you copy your final project partner on the email so I can hit reply all and get back to both of you. There's another interesting little article here in PR Week about how journalists, when Elon Musk acquired Twitter and turned it into X, many journalists started to flee it, but others have stuck around, a lot of them, as a matter of fact. And some have come back because it's hard to find a good alternative to Twitter. Threads is okay, which is, kind of an extension of Instagram. There've been a few others, Blue Sky, which I use some, but I just haven't been able to get the traction there that I've had with Twitter and other tools. Other journalists have seen the same thing. So let's dig into the lecture a little bit, and then we'll ease into some of these other things here. It's a very short one, lucky you. So I'll get through this relatively quickly. It's audience engagement and social video. I'll talk a little bit first about what audience engagement is. In a nutshell, it's listening. It's listening to the viewer, reader, listener, whoever is out there in your audience on social. The Associated Press, their social media section, which we had you read before this class in the AP style book, they talk about polls and comments at the end of stories, social media feedback, crowdsourcing, user-generated content, and those are all good ways to engage the reader. It's kind of like what Paul Bradshaw talked about in our article that we read in week 1, the call to action. How can I get the audience involved in the story? And those are all good, practices of it. But really, audience engagement is more than that. It goes much deeper. It's really having the audience be an active participant in developing the story and sometimes even reporting it, which is kind of weird. But I'll talk to you a little bit about this technique that was started right here in Chicago. It was called Curious City. If you ever listen to WBEZ 91.5 FM, that is Chicago's NPR affiliate. It is excellent. It has a partnership with Chicago Sun-Times where they share content. So some of the audio appears on the Sun-Times site. Sun-Times stories and partnerships on investigative pieces will appear in WBC. What it does, Curious City, is invites listeners to suggest ideas and then sends them to a website where viewers, or I should say listeners and website readers can vote on them. So they did this one. This one was animal related. I live on the North Shore and see coyotes frequently. Is there any evidence of coy wolves in the Chicagoland area? Squirrels, how many squirrels reside here? What do they do? They help? Take care of the city, and eat bugs and other things, and how does that compare with the number of mice, rats, raccoons, possums, and coyotes? And then it talks about otters too. They're spotted in the Chicago River quite a bit, and how many of them are there, and things like that. So, the audience can go in and vote. Then they tease us off the radio, in between their stories that they're reporting, go in and vote on our next story. And each week they would pick a new idea. There's a little field up here that you can type into. It looks a little bit different than this page, but still you can type in the idea and then they'll put it in here. And whichever one's selected, and this is the readers or the listeners that suggest them, they get to come into the office and work with the reporter on the story if they want to. They can even go out and do some field reporting. They can decline and just the reporter goes out and does it then. So it's kind of interesting because not a lot of newsrooms invite readers to go along and investigate the story. They've done some great ones. Not all of them are silly, animal stories like this. So they're kind of fun. They've dug into, some investigative stories. They've also looked at one of the funniest ones I ever saw, and they do a little radio spot with it and then write a story as well. Was what does an alderman really do all day? What does an alder person do all day? And they went and interviewed a bunch of them, and the person who raised the question from the audience went along and asked a lot of great questions. I don't think that the reporter would have thought to ask. And some of the alder people had trouble answering the question. What do you do with your day? What do you really do all day? It's quite interesting because our tax dollars pay for those aldermen's salaries. So. Typically answers the question, why? Why is something this way in Chicago? It was started by two people, Sean L. Lee, who just left WBEZ, and Jen Brandell, who's a friend of mine. She helped start this back in 2011. She has now broke out on her own, started her own company called Harkin. And what she does is she goes around all over the world. She has an office over in Europe too. It helps newsrooms engage the audience, kind of like what we saw here with Curious City. You can follow her on Twitter at Jennifer Brandell. She's really nice. She's really cool. I just got done doing a training session with her for the Online News Association over the summer about audience engagement and AI and things like that. So, kind of a cool thing. This audience engagement approach sort of originated here in Chicago, and Jen's built it into its own industry. And let alone her own company with the employees, a bunch of people, and they're located all over the world. Another way to engage the audience is through social video, and we've kind of done this already. Many of you did this with your mobile assignment. You created slideshows or took video with your phone and turned it into a little social video. Social video is typically very short. There's no voiceover from the reporter. Typically, it's little text cards that you would slip in between. And we've seen some of these examples before with mobile, in our mobile assignment. It uses video, graphics, text, and then they're tweeted out or sent over Facebook posts. And they're short, so people can pick them up right away. Some of you with your final projects will actually create one of these as a way to tease the story. Leading up to the story or during the story. Sometimes we even embed the social videos into the story because they're really good. So that works out sometimes. But a lot of students create these little short videos, and they're very easy to create. CapCut, BN Video Editor on your phone. I'll show you some other AI driven tools that we have from Noda that can create social videos out of your actual story, which is really cool. After you publish your story, then you can create the little video and it just extracts text and information right out of the story, which is really, really cool. Where did these social videos come from? They started to pop up in the late 2000s, around 2008, 2009. They were made very popular over BuzzFeed and Vox. Huffington Post picked up on them. And then they made their way to mainstream media where everybody pretty much does them now. They can be short digital video like we made with a mobile assignment, or they can be longer explanatory videos, kind of like those whiteboard videos that we have up on the Redline projects about page or our principles page, where it shows our reporting process for both data and digital. Those are social videos too, because we shared them over social media, and we still send them out from time to time, so our readers can better understand what we do. And those are just short social videos. They're under 3 minutes. They can be even shorter. They can be as long as 30 seconds. They typically use text on the screen with maybe a voiceover, typically not a lot of voiceover or stand-ups, from the reporter like the TV reporters do. And if there's voiceover in the background, a lot of times it's just music with the text cards. So those are two, pretty common approaches. Well, how does social video produce views? And a good case study in that comes from Michelle Nicolosi, another good friend of mine. She used to work at the Orange County Register when I worked at the LA Times. She's a former Pulitzer Prize winner. And she left, she was managing editor of a newspaper up in or a newspaper and website up in Seattle, Washington, that folded. And she was named the managing editor of the Oregonian in Portland. The Oregonian is a very well-known newspaper. It's won a lot of Pulitzer Prizes, produced some really great work over the years, fantastic newspaper. And Michelle, when she came in and took over, one of the first things she noticed, the website was really kind of lagging in views. And their, Facebook and Twitter, was really kind of lethargic. They weren't using a lot of video, and they weren't getting any views or any real reach or anything. So what she did first was she sat down with all the editors, and they took a look at what assets they have in the newspaper and on the website already, right? What they have right now. And she goes, how can we take those and make those into social media videos or more social friendly? So we're getting more engagement on social and possibly steering people back to those stories. And here's some of the things they did. The best inexpensive restaurants roundup. And this, they have this feature in the newspaper and on the website every week. So she turned it into a little social video, runs about a minute. And it's got all this information on, this is this little bakery here on Foster Road. And here's another one, all these great, they had all these great images already of all the food. And they started to, post these fairly regularly, a couple times a month, and sometimes they were cheap eats, sometimes it was formal dining, sometimes it was other things. This one happened to be cheap eats, best inexpensive restaurants roundup. Got 230,000 views on Facebook, which is, light years beyond anything they ever had before that. They also did travel videos. Oregon's a big hiking and biking and destination location. They reached more than 500,000, more than 500,000 people on Facebook, 167,000 views of it, and 3,700 people shared it because they had all these great photos and video of all their. This one was on scenic byways, just all these great beauty shots. They already had these. These were sitting around. The photographers had shot these over the years. They just pulled them together in a simple slideshow. The info was already there, and they started getting all this great, traffic to it. So it wasn't hard. They already had it there. One of the big ones, they also did the available pets for adoption photo gallery. Runs in the newspaper. You've seen them, here too. Adopt a pet. Sometimes TV stations do them, and they hook up with a local pet adoption agency, and they feature a dog or a cat or another animal every week, and in the newspaper and on the website, it was just a photo of the pets. Well, they started to have their web producers just in their spare time go out and shoot video of them in a bunch of photos. And this one was really good. Murphy and Girl, the one dog needs help because it's blind and deaf. So the little dog helps it, kind of steers it where to walk and where to go. Otherwise, the dog was lethargic, and if it was alone, wouldn't know where it's going, and wouldn't go out. Basically, wouldn't even leave the house. But as long as it has this little dog as its guide dog, they're good to go. I mean, it's just adorable, the video and the photos. And then they put the adoption at the end. Their engagement went through the roof because who doesn't love a cute dog video? So they started airing these fairly regularly, almost weekly on their Facebook page, and then they embed them into their website, share them on Twitter, and they got a lot of great feedback. And the adoption agency said, we're seeing a call to action here. We're getting results because people are adopting the pets quicker. So it's kind of a win-win. So it's kind of a cool use of it. Again, these are all assets that the news outlet already had. The only thing they had to do extra was send somebody out to shoot not just photos of the pets, but a little video too. It took 10 minutes. It's not that much of an effort. But one of the big things they started doing was having the reporters and columnists shoot more video when they were out doing stories. And with this one, they sent a web producer along with a columnist. And they were doing a story on what's called Meals on Wheels. This is a program, a free government program. It's also funded through donations by people. I've donated to it over the years. What it does is it takes food to people who are shut-ins, typically 2 meals a day during the week. And it's really good social too, because a lot of the people who are shut-ins don't have a lot of visitors. And the delivery people, chat them up and, bring them, healthy food too. It's not, junk food they're bringing to them. So they did a little ride along with this cute little lady who is a delivery person for them. She's 93, and she brings the food around. She brings, some of them are in nursing homes, others are shut-ins at homes. And the reason this was such a big story was it was early in 2017, early in Trump's run as president. And one of the first things he cut from the budget was the Meals on Wheels program. They later got it restored and also kind of over that time through a lot of donations, millions of dollars came into Meals on Wheels because they were cutting the funding to keep it alive. It came through generous donations of normal everyday people and the volunteers. They kept it going, but eventually the government funding came back and it's still going strong. Wonderful program. My sisters worked as a delivery person in it. My parents, right before they went into a nursing home, I set it up for them, because my mom couldn't cook anymore, and they were shut in. My local grocery store delivered the food to them, and also we did Meals on Wheels for them for I think a little over a year, and I paid for it because I could afford to pay for it, but it's free for people who really need the help, which is nice. So here you go. And the audio on this, I'll turn it up a little bit. And again, it's text slides and video. The music's a little too loud. It'll drown out some of the audio here. That's the only drawback here, but they do a wonderful job with it. And just followed her on her track. It's hard to hear her, but they use the text to help with that. The music kind of drowns her out. They didn't have a good microphone in the phone. They eventually got permission to use them. So what we call a ride along. They just follow along the person as they do their stuff.
Here earlier than anybody I've got.
Oh my goodness.
Again, Samantha Swindler went along and a columnist went along doing some reporting and interviewed Muriel and some other people and did the column, the opinion piece about why it's a bad idea to defund this program, which has been around for decades. Is just a wonderful thing. Stories like that, affect change. It got a lot of politicians' attention and others' attention, and brought a lot of attention to this issue. And it got about 200,000 reach and 87,000 views. Not as good as some of the other stuff, but still very good because it kind of complemented the column very well, which got much more views than it ever had before. So that's how you can do these social videos. One, they can accompany your longer story. like such as your final project, or they can even stand alone on their own 2 feet. Any of these projects kind of tell their own story, which is kind of cool. So those are my sources for this, mainly the WBEZ crew and Michelle Nicolosi too, who was great and shared all these analytics with me, which was really cool. So that's it for the lecture. Let's get into some of the stuff with social media now. We can be harassed in any number of different ways. And if we were meeting in class right now, I'd probably ask some of you, have you ever been harassed online or in person before? And I've been through it, over social media and threats, texting and things like that. And I'll tell that story back next week when we're in person, but and how I dealt with it. But there's a YouTube video here that I want you to watch. So you can pause this and just open it up and play it. It is won a Peabody Award. It was produced by Jezebel, which was a website. I believe it's still the parent company went under. They went out of business, but I think Jezebel's still around in kind of a smaller scope. But what this video does, if you've ever watched Jimmy Kimmel's show and his mean tweets where he has like Matt Damon on and he has to read a tweet that's really mean about him, they're actually real tweets. Well, they took this and twisted it a little bit. Julie DeCaro, who's a sports journalist here in Chicago. She's also an attorney, family law attorney. She actually wrote a book about her experience being harassed as a female sports journalist. She was a blogger for the Chicago Tribune, so she wrote a lot about baseball. She also worked at WSCR The Score. She used to read the sports news in the morning, come on and kind of like they read the news on the regular radio stations. She would come on and read all the sports highlights. She did that for I think about 3 or 4 years, and I think she's back practicing law, and she's also doing some sports stuff on the side. She's appeared on TV a lot. She's been around. And the other person in here is Sarah Spain, who you'll probably is a little more recognizable. Sarah's a sports writer. She used to live here in Chicago. She's now based elsewhere. She works for ESPN. She's on a lot of their shows in the afternoon where they talk about different sports topics and stuff. They get harassed daily. I would say almost hourly by trolls on social media. So they may post something about sports or their opinion on sports or link to a story or video or audio. And these trolls come in who, again, no name on their social media account or it's a fake name, and say all kinds of awful things about it. And what they've done here is this little social experiment is they've given some of these mean tweets to these men who they've paid to come in and read them. Now, the men reading them are not the ones that wrote the tweets. These are just, normal everyday people who, wanted to do this video and got paid to come in and do it. And they'll read these things. They start out kind of innocent, it's kind of, you're a scrub muffin for saying that about the Cubs, it's not nice, but it's not something that goes, too deep. Then they start to get into some really mean things, very, very rough. And if it's too tough for you, go ahead and pause the video because it is hard to hear some of this. But when you're watching it, I want you to watch the reaction of the women at the beginning and then toward the end, when the tweets get meaner, but also the reactions of the men who didn't write the tweet. And that's what's really interesting is to see, somebody that's, good person reading this stuff and having to look the person in the eye and say these words to them. It's very, very difficult to do. So just kind of go ahead and do that. Normally I would just play this in class. I'm not going to play it on here, but, hit the pause button now and play the video. All right, you guys should have come back now from playing the video. Again, this won a Peabody Award for its work. It was a good social experiment. And the reaction of the men, especially as it became very mean, they were like, really, do I have to read this? And they say, I'm sorry. Like, oh my God, a couple of them were near tears. And the women, it became much, much harder for them. And you could see the tears, especially in Julie's eyes, build up. And neither group had heard them read before. The guys didn't know what was coming, what the tweets were going to say. The women had read them before because, they see their Twitter account. If you or a family member have ever been harassed online, we'll talk about this next week a little bit. I want to talk to you a little bit about how you handled it, and I'll share my story about how I handled it because it was pretty rough, especially about 2 years ago. This first started, and it occurred again off and on in little spurts here and there. But nothing like what I faced in my first week with it. And there's some techniques that I learned to help me deal with it. And it's still very difficult. Some of those tips come from a website called Trollbusters, fabulous organization. Michelle Ferreira as a former journalist, now college professor at the Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. She started Trollbusters after she got harassed as a columnist for a local newspaper. She's an African American woman. A lot of people came in and attacked her. There you can see her on the little graphic there. Attacked her over race and gender and just really just mortifying things. And she went out and raised some money. She went out and found some funders and went out and built this program to help journalists deal with people who are harassing them. Fantastic work. They do training sessions. There's a lot of research in here. I'm going to show you a graphic in just a minute that's very helpful. You can follow her on Twitter, Trollbusters at your SOS team. I've got a link to it on your schedule there. She offers all kinds of tips. These are what she calls toxic Avengers. These are little zines that she puts out about dealing with the issue, and they're fascinating reading. If you're going to work in social media, I highly recommend that the subscription's free, so you can subscribe to it for free. The newsletter, it's also got a little website with it as well. She mostly shares that, but also they have trainings. Sometimes they're online, many times free, because they're paid for by funders. Into the Trollbuster resources. One of them I use is this little handout in here called harassment tips. And this is a little graphic. It's kind of a flow chart. It says, are you being harassed online? And what is happening right now? Is someone attacking my website? Maybe doing a DOS attack, sending traffic to it to crash, DDoS attack. Is someone doxing me and sharing, personal information about me, revenge porn, things like that? Is someone, sexually explicit photographs of me without my consent? Someone posted an implied threat. This is what I went through. Physical threats, pictures of the outside of my home sent to me, saying, we know where you live. Happened to a couple of my colleagues too, and I'll tell their stories as well. They had kids, which was really scary. Someone has posted an explicit threat. They'll threaten to blackmail you, all kinds of stuff. Somebody's posted a libelous comment about you. Maybe somebody's set up a fake Twitter account about impersonating you or someone. And it gives you a checklist of tips of what to do in that situation. A lot of them, it says just walk away from your Twitter or your social media platforms for a day or two and have a colleague monitor them. If it's threats or the doxing, report it to police. Report it to Trollbusters. They can come and give you some support as well. Not physically come to you, but reach out to you by phone or something and help you with it. They can also steer you toward mental health counseling if you need it. It can be scary stuff. Also block and report. That's always kind of my first step. If somebody's trolling me a little bit on social media, block them and then report it to the platform, and they'll get the account either suspended or taken down. So she just gives you, Michelle just put this little checklist here, depending on what way you're being harassed, here's what to do. And she built this out of her own personal experience, but also what she learned from researching in interviewing hundreds of journalists about this. So they built this chart to help us. So you can blow this up and make it a little bigger so you can read a little better. But good resource. And I keep this nearby and actually had to use it a couple of years ago, believe it or not. Another good set of tips are on this little Twitter thread here. It's under number 4 on our schedule. It comes from Jessica Huseman, another great journalist. She works for a voting rights website now, but she used to be at ProPublica. And she goes, "Have you ever been harassed online?" Because she was during the election years, she often gets targeted by alt-right and alt-left groups that come in and attack her. And all she writes about is, data about voting tendencies. Tell me what your single most helpful tip was for stopping it, dealing with it, or preventing it. And most of the people that react here are women. Allison Carter, who worked for the Indianapolis Star for many years, she goes in here. I usually get tweeted and dogpiled, so I mute the thread, block anyone who evades a mute, shut off my DMs. Have a colleague look at my account. There are many other great tips in here. There are a few guys in here too, but almost everybody that responded was a woman, high percentage. But the tips are absolutely fabulous. And I've always kept this one nearby. Some of them just give the simple tips, you block them. But other ones get into really detailed process of how they handled it, which is really good. And this isn't limited just to journalism. Gamergate with female gamers. Boy, there's been all kinds of groups of people that have been harassed online, and it's not always based on gender. It can be on race, age. Somebody that's young or older online, are oftentimes targets. My crime was speaking at a conference. That's why the alt-right group came after me. And that was my big crime. I went and did a training on fact checking. Terrible. The next link that you have on your handout too is just some helpful journalists who are out on Twitter. Jessica Huseman is among them, and some organizations and things like Trollbusters is on here as well. These are worth a follow from you. So if you want to just go through and follow these on your Twitter account, many of them will follow you back, and you can interact with them. Just really good accounts to just kind of get started with. Some are local, some are national, some are international accounts. BBC Africa, which does some incredible social media storytelling as well as fact checking. Really cool organization. It doesn't just, it's BBC's got a satellite office in West Africa, but they fact check stuff all over the world. It's a wonderful organization. That was all I had for social media today. We're going to get into a little bit more of it next week in person, and then again after the midterm. Final project ideas, make sure you've emailed them to me by noon on Monday, October 7th. Remember, we went over this the other day, but this little handout on how to write a final project pitch. Your slugs at the top, which is a few words describing it. Your reporter names go there. Anybody you plan to interview, and this group was very detailed who they were going to reach out to. This story was published. It actually won an award too. Very good story. And then possible graphics or interactive things you're going to do with it, video or a story map or a Google map or whatever. By the time you finish the project, some of these graphics and sources may change, and that's fine. But just give me an idea up front of what you're thinking going in. So oftentimes we change. We have some great audio, so instead of video, we do audio with the project. Whatever you want to use is fine. But just give me an idea going in of what the story's about, who you plan to talk to, and what you're thinking as far as graphics and charts and things like that. Images, slideshows, video, whatever. So that was all I had for today. Just make sure you go through and do all of the homework, which is mostly reading and looking over that social media graphics guide. We're going to get into those next week. And hope you have a great weekend. And yes, this is me at the tender age of 31. And I was working at the Chicago Tribune. I have a scowl on my face because it's 4:30 in the morning on St. Patrick's Day. And we're still launching the Chicago Tribune's website. So there you go. All right. Have a great weekend, everybody. And we'll see you in person next week in SEO 1200. Take care.